Robert Mitchell's story begins on the cold cobblestones of London, just steps from Buckingham Palace, where he lay motionless, a Gulf War veteran forgotten by the world he once fought for. In his late 50s or early 60s, with graying hair and a face etched with deep lines, Robert was a shadow of the soldier he'd once been. Back in the early 1990s, he'd marched under the desert sun, rifle in hand, answering the call of duty with unwavering loyalty. But when he returned home, the welcome was far less warm than the sands he'd left behind. Jobs were scarce, support was fleeting, and the memories of war, explosions, lost comrades, the relentless heat, clung to him like a second skin. Diagnosed with PTSD, he found crowded homeless shelters unbearable, their bunk beds and noise amplifying his nightmares. Instead, he sought refuge in parks, where wide-open spaces offered an odd sense of safety, a stark contrast to the chaos in his mind. Day after day, he wandered the streets with just a few coins jingling in his pocket, his shoes frayed at the laces, and a tattered coat that blended into the gray stone of the city. Hunger gnawed at him. He hadn't eaten more than a crust of bread in over 24 hours, and dehydration weakened his already fragile body. That morning, drawn to the palace almost instinctively, he paused before a royal guard, the scarlet tunic and stoic stance stirring faint echoes of his own military past. As dizziness overwhelmed him, Robert's collapse wasn't just physical, it was the culmination of years of being unseen, a veteran reduced to a statistic, fighting a silent battle long after the war had ended. In the heart of London, beneath the grand arches of Buckingham Palace, a royal guard named Andrew Macmillan stood as a living emblem of tradition, his scarlet tunic and bearskin cap a testament to centuries of unwavering protocol. On that fateful morning, as tourists snapped photos and children marveled at his statue-like stillness, Andrew's gaze was fixed forward, his rifle angled with precision. But when Robert Mitchell, a homeless Gulf War veteran, collapsed just 2 steps away, something shifted. Robert lay motionless on the cobblestones, his shallow breast barely visible, and the crowd froze, some reaching for phones, others whispering in uncertainty. For Andrew, the sight of a fallen man stirred memories of his own service in Afghanistan, where he'd seen comrades falter under heat and gunfire. Protocol demanded he remain immobile, a silent sentinel unless the crown or palace faced a direct threat. Yet in a moment that defied over 300 years of tradition, Andrew pivoted sharply, the click of his polished boots echoing like a drumbeat. Kneeling beside Robert, he set his rifle down with deliberate care and pressed 2 fingers to the veteran's neck, checking for a pulse as he'd done on battlefields far from London's pomp. "Hang in there, mate," he whispered, his Scottish accent carrying a warmth that cut through the morning chill. This act, simple yet profound, transformed Andrew from a ceremonial figure into a soldier once more, prioritizing a stranger's life over rigid rules. As he lifted Robert's head to clear his airway, Andrew's compassion not only saved a man, but also ignited a spark of humanity that would soon ripple across the globe, proving that duty, at its core, is about heart as much as honor. The moment Robert Mitchell crumpled to the cobblestones near Buckingham Palace, a hush fell over the crowd of tourists, their smartphones poised uncertainly between capturing a tragedy or a miracle. What unfolded next? A royal guard named Andrew Macmillan, breaking centuries of protocol to kneel beside the homeless veteran, transformed a fleeting scene into a viral sensation that swept across the globe. As Andrew checked Robert's pulse and whispered words of encouragement, onlookers ranging from wide-eyed teenagers to tearful retirees fumbled with their cameras, recording every second of this unprecedented act. Within minutes, grainy videos flooded social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, each clip accompanied by captions like, "Royal Guard breaks protocol to save homeless vet," or "Act of compassion at Buckingham Palace leaves tourists in tears." The footage, shaky yet poignant, showed Andrew's scarlet tunic stark against the gray pavement, his gloved hand steadying Robert's frail form, and it struck a universal chord. By noon, the story had garnered thousands of views, swelling to millions within hours as retweets and shares carried it from London to living rooms in New York, Sydney, and beyond. Hashtags like #GuardYourHumanity trended sporadically, While comments poured in, "This is what humanity looks like," wrote one user. "I cried watching this," confessed another. News outlets scrambled to cover the event, interviewing witnesses who recounted the moment with trembling voices. One older man in a tweed jacket, eyes welling, marveled, "I've watched these guards my whole life. I've never seen this." The viral wave wasn't just about spectacle. It tapped into a deep-seated yearning for kindness in a world often divided by rules and status. Andrew's superiors at the palace faced a dilemma. Protocol had been breached, but the tidal wave of public praise drowned out any talk of reprimand. Instead, his humanity was lauded, with whispers of a commendation circulating among the ranks. For millions watching, this wasn't just a guard and a veteran. It was a reminder that a single, selfless act could pierce through tradition, uniting strangers in shared awe and empathy, proving that compassion, caught on camera, could light up screens and hearts alike, leaving an indelible mark on a digital age hungry for hope. Beneath the imposing gates of Buckingham Palace, where Robert Mitchell collapsed in a heap of exhaustion and despair, an unspoken bond flickered to life, one forged not in the moment, but in the crucible of military service that both he and Andrew McMillan, the Royal Guard, had endured. Robert, a Gulf War veteran, had once stood tall under the blistering desert sun, his uniform a badge of pride as he followed orders with unwavering discipline. Decades later, those days were a distant memory, buried beneath years of homelessness and PTSD that left him haunted by the faces of fallen comrades. Andrew, younger but no stranger to war, had served in Afghanistan, where the chaos of battle, heat exhaustion, frantic calls for medics, and the weight of lost lives had shaped him into more than just a ceremonial guard. When Robert fell, Andrew's decision to break protocol wasn't random. It was instinctual, driven by a soldier's recognition of a brother in arms. Kneeling beside Robert, pressing fingers to his pulse, Andrew saw beyond the tattered coat and graying hair. He saw a man who'd faced the same trials, the same invisible scars. "Hang in there, mate," he murmured, a soldier's promise transcending their vastly different paths. Days later, their bond deepened when Andrew, now in civilian clothes, met Robert at the hospital. Over steaming coffee and sandwiches, he shared his own struggles, coming home to a world that didn't always understand, feeling trapped in memories of overseas chaos. "I know what it's like," he said quietly, gesturing to Robert's cane. "You've done more for this country than most can imagine." For Robert, who'd felt invisible for years, Andrew's words were a lifeline, rekindling a sense of worth he'd thought lost. Andrew offered practical help too, a card for a veterans outreach program, a promise to be a reference, cementing their connection with action. Their meeting, born from that pavement rescue, was a quiet testament to a shared military ethos. No one gets left behind. For Andrew, saving Robert was a chance to honor the men he couldn't save overseas. For Robert, it was a reminder that even in his lowest moment, another soldier saw him, not as a statistic, but as a man still worth fighting for. When Robert Mitchell's legs gave way on the cobblestones near Buckingham Palace, it marked not just a physical collapse, but the lowest ebb of a life battered by war and neglect. A Gulf War veteran, he'd returned home to find no safety net, only streets that swallowed him whole, and PTSD that replayed the desert's horrors in endless loops. That morning, weakened by hunger and dehydration, he crumpled, a forgotten figure in a tattered coat, until Andrew McMillan, the Royal Guard who broke protocol, knelt to save him. That act of compassion became the pivot point for Robert's redemption. Rushed to a hospital 2 miles away, he awoke to sterile walls and the beep of machines, his military tattoos noticed by nurses who pinned a poppy by his bed, a small nod to his service. As he stabilized, Robert's disjointed memories of Andrew's voice saying, "Hang in there, mate," of a red silhouette against the gray, crystallized into gratitude. "He reminded me I'm still worth saving," he murmured, tears welling. Discharged with a cane and fresh clothes from a local charity, Robert took his first shaky steps toward recovery, bolstered by Andrew's visit. Over coffee, Andrew handed him a card for a veterans outreach program, promising support, and Robert vowed to seize this second chance. Soon he stepped into a transitional housing center, A clean room with crisp sheets replacing park benches. A roof he wouldn't be kicked out of at dawn. Hesitantly, he began PTSD counseling, joining other veterans who recognized him from the viral video. Nightmares eased, flashbacks softened, and the camaraderie of shared stories lifted the weight of shame he'd carried for years. Then came a job, part-time security at a community center. Simple work that tapped his old skills, giving him purpose as he greeted folks at the door. When asked about being that homeless vet from the footage, he'd smile. It reminds me how far I've come. From a man unseen by society to one rebuilding step by step. Robert's redemption was no fairy tale, but a hard-won reality, sparked by Andrew's kindness and fueled by his own resolve to honor it. A testament to resilience rising from the ashes of despair. When Andrew McMillan, a Royal Guard, stepped away from his post at Buckingham Palace to aid a collapsed Robert Mitchell, he didn't just save one life. He set off a chain reaction that reverberated far beyond London's cobblestones. The moment, captured on shaky smartphone videos, exploded across social media, racking up millions of views within days. Headlines like "Royal Guard breaks protocol to save homeless vet" buzzed through news feeds, while hashtags such as "Your Guard Your Humanity" trended, uniting strangers in a shared swell of emotion. Tourists who witnessed the scene, some with tears streaming, others clapping quietly, shared interviews with local news, their voices trembling as they described a tradition-bending act of kindness they'd never forget. Inside the palace, Andrew's superiors faced a dilemma. Centuries of protocol had been breached, yet as each retweet and comment praised his humanity, "This is what honor looks like," one wrote. The tide of public opinion drowned out calls for reprimand. Buckingham Palace issued a statement, balancing the importance of rules with applause for Andrew's quick response in a life-or-death moment, and whispers of a commendation soon followed. Beyond the palace gates, the impact deepened. Veterans worldwide, especially those grappling with homelessness and PTSD, found hope in Robert's story, a rare spotlight on their struggles. Donations flooded local shelters, with bags of clothes and stacks of cash arriving as people opened their hearts and wallets. Veteran support lines rang off the hook, not just with calls for help, but with offers to volunteer or donate, as communities rallied to prevent others from slipping through the cracks. Londoners organized fundraisers, their efforts echoing a global sentiment. One man's compassion could ignite widespread empathy. Andrew resumed his post, his face impassive as tourists now whispered, "That's him," snapping photos with a new reverence. The ripple effects lingered. Visitors who once sought selfies now discussed empathy, inspired by a guard who chose a life over a rule. Robert, meanwhile, became an unintended symbol, his journey from pavement to purpose, amplifying the message that kindness can bridge divides. In a world often rigid with tradition, this single act proved that humanity, when unleashed, could spark a movement, turning a viral moment into a lasting call for care and connection. In the shadow of Buckingham Palace, where tradition has stood firm for over 3 centuries, Andrew McMillan's decision to abandon his post in aid of fallen Robert Mitchell revealed a truth more powerful than protocol. Kindness can transcend even the strictest of rules. As a Royal Guard, Andrew was trained to remain a statue, rifle angled, gaze fixed, unmoved by the world swirling around him. Yet when Robert, a homeless veteran, collapsed nearby, Andrew didn't hesitate. He knelt, checked his pulse, and whispered, "Hang in there, mate," choosing humanity over the ceremonial stillness demanded of him. This single act, defying centuries of British pageantry, stunned onlookers and sparked a viral wave that touched millions. It wasn't just the breach of protocol that captivated the world. It was the reminder that beneath uniforms and titles, we're all human, bound by a shared capacity for good. The crowd's gasps turned to applause. Social media lit up with praise, and even palace officials, though initially torn, lauded Andrew's compassion over reprimanding his rule-breaking. For Robert, it was a lifeline, a chance to reclaim his worth after years of invisibility. For Andrew, it was a reaffirmation that duty isn't just about standing tall, but about lifting others up. Their story, echoing from London's cobblestones to screens worldwide, became a beacon. Protocol may guide us, tradition may shape us, but kindness unites us. It showed that in a moment of crisis, a single choice, to act, to care, can bridge gaps of status and circumstance, proving that humanity's strength lies not in rigidity, but in its willingness to bend for the sake of another. In the end, this wasn't about fame. It was about a lesson as old as time, beautifully reborn in a modern spotlight. The story of Robert Mitchell and Andrew McMillan carries timeless lessons that resonate deeply as we grow older. First, it reminds us that compassion can outweigh rules. Andrew's choice to help a struggling veteran over adhering to protocol shows that doing what's right often matters more than following the script. For us seniors, this might mean lending a hand to a neighbor or speaking up when someone's overlooked, even if it's inconvenient. Second, it highlights the power of seeing others. Robert, invisible for years, found hope when Andrew truly saw him. We can apply this by noticing those around us, offering a kind word or a listening ear to someone feeling lost. Finally, it's a call to resilience. Robert rebuilt his life step by step, proving it's never too late for a second chance. As we face our own challenges, health setbacks, loss, or change, we can draw strength from his journey, knowing small acts of courage and support can lead to renewal. Life's rules matter, but its heart lies in kindness, recognition, and perseverance, values we've learned over decades and can still live out every day.